எல்லாருக்கும் அனுப்பிட்டியா? யாருக்கு அனுப்பினேன்? கிரேஸ் க்ளோரி அனுப்பலையா? Well, here is a story, and we all like story, and one more story I would like to share with you, and the title I would like to say is The Story of an Unbeliever and Spiritual Father. Story of an unbeliever and a spiritual father. That's what we are going to see. So let me start with a narration. Once, about 800 years before Christ, say roughly about 3,000 years ago, once there was a man from Ethiopia. Ethiopia, he was also called as the Cushite. Today we call that country, it's called Ethiopia and Cush. Well, this man was an eunuch, so we can say he was a person who was, first of all, not a believer, living in a strange country called Israel for him, and he was a transgender, we can say. But he got, those days some of these eunuchs will get a good job, particularly in the palace. Whether you see it in the book of Esther or you see it in this particular place during the time of King Zedekiah. Well, something happened. There was a man called Jeremiah. He was a spiritual father to the entire nation of Israel. It is called now the nation of Judah. Israel was already taken captive, the 10 tribes, and now Judah, the 2 tribes, they, about 100 years earlier, Israel was taken captive by the Assyrians. Now Judah is left over. God kept on warning through the spiritual father, mainly through Jeremiah, but they couldn't care less, and so therefore a day came that, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, came. Just before he came, I would like to share something about the background. The background is still, Judah is not taken captive. Still, Jeremiah kept prophesying as a spiritual father. He warned his spiritual children again and again and again. But the entire nation, they were not taking care, including Zedekiah. The word Zedekiah means Jehovah is righteous. What a name. But still he was not giving such an importance to the spiritual father. There were some fellows, 4 of them, who was influenced by the king. Their names are mentioned also. It's not necessary to mention their names, 4 of them. So they were against Jeremiah. They wanted to put him in the prison. Reason? Jeremiah kept warning. Some people don't like warning. Warning can be oral. Warning can be by some other ways. Warning can be through the word of God. But some of these fellows, 4 of them, did not like. And they're telling this fellow Jeremiah, we should finish him, because he's telling death will come. He's telling famine will come. He's telling plague will come. And most strangely, he's telling, please submit yourself to the enemy. That's what he's telling. Israel never wanted to submit to the enemy. But Jeremiah said, if you want prosperity, submit to the enemy. Listen to the enemy. Bring yourself to the enemy and everything will go well. That was the message. Then the officials of the king said, this man should be put to death because he is discouraging. Sometimes spiritual father may speak in such a way, it may discourage. Nevertheless, there is a life behind it. There is a blessing behind it. There is a message behind it. There is a backing of God behind it. There is a God supporting. It's from God. But they took it in a discouraging way. And they said, chapter 38 and verse 4 of the book of Jeremiah is discouraging people, particularly the soldiers, and he is not seeking the good of the people. He is not seeking the good of the believers, but whereas it was exactly opposite. The spiritual father was really concerned about the spiritual children. But look at the interpretation, look at the misunderstanding. Sometimes the spiritual father may not even pray. It looks little hard, but if you see the background, little bit of the background in Jeremiah 7, God said, don't pray to these people. Let them set certain things right and then you pray. Otherwise, I'm not going to hear your prayer. And so therefore, Jeremiah will be wasting. First of all, wasting to pray. Secondly, he is disobeying to pray. Did you listen? Disobeying to pray. When you pray for somebody, it's good. But God has already told him, don't pray for these people. So Jeremiah has to obey, the spiritual father has to obey what they may misunderstand. Absolutely fine. All prophets are misunderstood. Once Jesus said something fantastic. I was shocked 50 years ago when I read the scripture. Jesus said, when everybody speak good about you, woe is unto you. W-O-E. If everybody is talking good about you, woe means there is a curse that can come upon you. Even the false prophet were branded, good. Well, these fellows who did not like the spiritual father came to the king and said, let's put him in the prison. Zedekiah, he had such a respect for the spiritual father, he should have took a stand, but this fellow was, compromiser. He said something like this, chapter 38 of Jeremiah, verse 5, he is in your hands. Spiritual father is in your hands. The king can do nothing to oppose you. I don't do anything. Do whatever you like to the spiritual father. They took Jeremiah, put him in the, cistern is like a small well. Each one will make their own well. In the rainy season, it's like a rain harvest kind of setup. So that it's a very small thing. And so this cistern, this was like a small well without water, let's say, full of dirt. Sometimes when people don't like to do some dirty work, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I will tell you the thought I got yesterday, maybe from God. If you don't do dirty work for God, God will not do worst work for you. What is worse than dirty? Sin. If you are not willing to handle dirty things for God, then God is not willing to handle your dirty sins. You'll have a problem. Okay, that's the thought I got yesterday. And so I'm never ashamed to do some dirty work for God. I have been doing 51 years. My date of birth is also 51 years, but I'm in the ministry also 51 years I have been doing some dirty works for God. It's all for God. When Jesus did for me, willing to take not only my dirt, the dirt of the whole world, the sin of the whole world, should I not willing to do? Well, what happened to these fellows? They didn't like Jeremiah, so the spiritual fathers, some people, these people at least, these four fellows were honest, they want to kill Jeremiah. Not immediately, silently kill him, put him in the cistern, after a few days he will die. No water. And Josephus, heard about the historian called Josephus. He says, when Jeremiah was put in the cistern, he came almost up to the neck. Only his head is visible. It was a miry clay or a dirt that was, muddy water. There was no water, but there was a muddy thing. And he was sinking, old man, spiritual father. Well, I feel sorry for this man, how these fellows, these prophets of God, who has gone through all kinds of, dirty experiences for God, faithfully went on preaching again and again and again. Over 100 times the word or the words comes in the book of Jeremiah. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah again and again and again. Okay, they took him and put him in the cistern or a small well, if you like, that one, and so Jeremiah is sinking. That was, that cistern was in the Malchijah, the king's son, that belongs in the courtyard. That means within the palace there was a small cistern. In that well they put Jeremiah. And they lowered him by ropes into the cistern. It had no water. Verse 6, Jeremiah 38, verse 6. It had no water in it, only mud. And Jeremiah sank down in the mud. Oh my God. What a kind of treatment they give for the spiritual father who gave the word of God faithfully for years. Is this the way you can treat a prophet of God when he faithfully brought without expecting any money from you, only expecting good about you, only obeying what God wanted to tell, But anyway, they treated him like that. But B-U-T. This is where the story changes, real story. Our hero comes, or a second hero comes. There was a man called Ebed-Melech. I told you, he was a Cushite or an Ethiopian, and he was eunuch. And the word Ebed means servant. Melech in Hebrew means king. Ebed-Melech means servant of the king. Abed or Abdullah, they say, that means servant of the king. He was faithful fellow. That time the king was a compromiser, Zedekiah. He was in the royal palace, heard that Jeremiah was put into the cistern. How did he hear? Remember I said in the palace there was a cistern that belongs to one of the sons of the king, princess cistern, dug for rainwater or something, but it was not maintained. So Jeremiah was put, and therefore when Jeremiah was screaming, shouting, perhaps not shouting, mourning, grieving because of pain, old man, that sound echoed through the cistern and came to the palace. He heard Who is that? Crying day and night. 1 day, 2 days. What's happening here? And so this man, Ebed-Melech, unbeliever, took a real bold stand for the spiritual father. Amazing man. In heaven, I have some 7 people I wanted to meet quickly after meeting Jesus. And maybe I should add Ebed-Melech also, somebody who honored. The only thing that Ebed-Melech did was he honored this spiritual father, who was not his spiritual father, but he recognized he was a spiritual father of the country. But I'm an unbeliever, so he's not my spiritual father. But nevertheless, let me help this man of God, spiritual father. That was his attitude. And he could hear Jeremiah, old man, crying. And so he goes to the king. Wow, what a courage. You see, that means he has to take a stand against that 4 fellows who already put Jeremiah into the well so that Jeremiah will die. And so Ebed-Melech went out of the palace and said to the king, "My lord, the king, these men have acted wickedly in all they have done to this spiritual father, Jeremiah. They have thrown him into the cistern." King did not know that he was thrown. Maybe he might have heard some sound. He was busy. Busy people have no time for spiritual father or the voice of somebody who is going through. So therefore, this man, Zedekiah, who had a name called God is my righteous. Only namesake. Okay. Jehovah is righteous. So this man couldn't take care of one spiritual father. The country is in a dangerous position. The war is going to start. Now recently also people started asking me, when is the war going to start? Or when is the world going to end? Or when is Antichrist is going to come? And things like that. Something like that kind of situation. And he said, these people have acted wickedly in all they have done to Jeremiah. They have thrown him into the cistern where he will starve to death. That the purpose is silent the spiritual father. We don't want to hear him. No communication. The best communication is kill him. So there's no communication. Starve him to death where there is no longer any bread or food in the city. Already there is a famine, there is a COVID kind of situation, situation that was coming. Then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the Cushite, take 30 people. Wow, now this man has got some sense is coming. Earlier he was not caring for the spiritual father. Now he's telling, okay, take 30 people here with you and lift Jeremiah, the prophet, out of the cistern before he dies. Wow. I think a little bit of blessing came to Zedekiah. I will tell you how. But before that, our focus is Ebed-Melech. Ebed-Melech, you know what he did? He took 30 people with him, went to a room, and he searched for guess what? Some old rags. So I picked up personally some old rags, and so something that is useless was used for spiritual father. Something that was kept for many, many days, that old rags had a blessing on that day. And then what happened? So he took the old rags and worn out clothes from there and led some ropes. Of course, now I have a plastic ones. Those days it must have been something different material he took. Guess what? Only one reason: to lift the spiritual father, to allow the spiritual father to communicate. not to see that the spiritual father dying. So that is the reason that we see Ebed-Melech took the man with him and went to the room under the treasury in the palace and took some old clothes and worn out clothes, and there that worn out clothes might not have what you call thought that one day I am going to bless the spiritual father. Why is that? Ebed-Melech the Cushite said to Jeremiah, wow, now unbeliever is speaking to the spiritual father. He already had some kind of attachment, one, for spiritual father, concern for spiritual father, 3, he wanted to help spiritual father, 4, he did not want the spiritual father to die, 5, he wanted to protect spiritual father. And now Ebed-Melech the Cushite is going to speak to Jeremiah, and listen, this is what he is going to speak. Chapter 38 and verse 12 of Jeremiah. Put these old clothes and worn out clothes under your arms, pad the ropes. That's what he is telling. Wow. What a word, what a thought, what a encouragement. Put these old clothes, rags, worn out clothes, under your arms. He was concerned about the arms. Wow. That's what we are going to see. And then what happened? They pulled him up with the ropes. Oh my God. They pulled Jeremiah, the spiritual father, pulled him up with the ropes and lifted him out of the cistern. One unbeliever had a concern for the spiritual father. That's the story. And then Jeremiah, the spiritual father, was saved by an unbeliever. The entire country were believers. They were not concerned about the spiritual father. The leader, Zedekiah, also was not concerned about the spiritual father. Anyway, somehow towards the end, he had some kind of thought. But this man took 30 people, went against that princess, four fellows, and gathered some, some of the old rags, and then he also took the rope and lifted Jeremiah from the well. Amazing man. Then what happened? Chapter 39. Zedekiah, the king of Judah, you know what happened? Nebuchadnezzar marched against Jerusalem, and the whole believers' country is taken over by the enemy. Had Zedekiah listened to the spiritual father, he would have saved. You know what happened to this fellow? Zedekiah, all his children were killed in front of his eyes. Why? He did not listen to the spiritual father. Just because he did not listen to, this one man did not listen to the spiritual father, all his sons were killed. Not only that, strange thing, verse 6 says, there at Riblah, the king of Babylon slaughtered the sons of, slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. Before whose eyes? Zedekiah's eyes. Why? He did not listen to the spiritual father. Then what happened? Also killed all the nobles. Now where are those fellows who put the Jeremiah into the well, you know? They were also killed. And now, sad news. Chapter 39 of Jeremiah, verse 7. Then he put out Zedekiah's eyes. Believers' eyes was removed. His eyes was removed. Why? He did not listen to the spiritual father's advice. I wish he would have believed or listened at least. Listened. Only one advice Jeremiah gave, that one also he did not receive. So he saw, his eyes was opened to see all his children killed, and then his eyes was removed. Bound with bronze shackles, and he was taken to as a blind man to Babylon. Only one reason: did not care to listen to the one advice of spiritual father. He deserved it. Of course, had he listened, the story would have been different. But there were some people who listened, some poor people, and they were spared. The Babylonians set the fire, royal palace, houses of people, broke down the walls of all believers. Believers' country was destroyed, believers' houses were destroyed, believers, not ordinary believers, strongest believers, their properties were destroyed, their health was gone, on the top, their life also was destroyed. But listen to this story, verse 9 of chapter 39 of Jeremiah. Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, carried into exile Babylon the people who remained in the city along with those who were gone with him. But Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard, left behind in the land of Judah to some of the poor people who owned nothing, and overnight they became rich because they had listened to the spiritual father. Now, verse 11. Now Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had given these orders. What is the order? Listen to these orders. Chapter 39 and verse 11. Orders about Jeremiah, the spiritual father. This man has come to attack the entire city except one person, Jeremiah. Through Nebuzaradan, the imperial guard, you know what he said? One, take him. Take the spiritual father. Kill all others, but spare the spiritual father. Secondly, look after him. That is verse 12 of chapter 39. And thirdly, don't harm him. Don't harm the spiritual father. All others you harm, but not this fellow. But do for him whatever he asks. You know, it's like a blank check. This is an order from Babylon. Whatever the spiritual father asks, you do it. That's the command I am giving you, Nebuzaradan. And so Nebuzaradan, the commander of the guard, and Nebuzaradan, a chief officer, and others, they sent a word and they searched and found Jeremiah. Taken out of the court of the guard, and they handed over to Gedaliah, who became later the governor, and now Jeremiah stayed with his people. Story has not ended. Now listen to this. The title of this message is Unbeliever, the story of an unbeliever and the spiritual father. So Nebuchadnezzar came, destroyed the city of believers, destroyed the country of believers, killed some of them, taken some of them, killed especially the leaders, killed especially 4 people who have put Jeremiah in the well, and removed the eyes of Zedekiah, the big believer, who had a very good name, and killed his children. All because he did not listen to the spiritual father. And now only one person in the entire country listened to the spiritual father. Who is that? Ebed-Melech. Now listen, very beautiful. I am about to close. I am very excited. Jeremiah chapter 39 and verse 15. While Jeremiah had been confined in the courtyard of the God, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, the spiritual father. Let us listen what God has to speak. Now the country is destroyed. No more temple, no more country, no more properties, no more houses. Everything is vandalized and everything is gone and destroyed and nothing is left. Very few people are there in Judah. That's poor people. And Jeremiah is there. And now the word of the Lord comes. Let's see what the word of the Lord comes. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah and said, go and tell Ebed-Melech, the Cushite or the Ethiopian, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel says. Wow. God is giving a message to an unbeliever now through the spiritual father. What is God saying? I am about to fulfill my words against this city, believer city. Words concerning disaster, not prosperity. Same Jeremiah said, I have a plan for you, plan for not calamity, it's for prosperity, but God is reversing towards the end. It's for calamity and not for prosperity. For whom? For the believers. Why? They did not listen to the one word of the spiritual father. At that time, they will be fulfilled before your own eyes. Who is saying to who? God is saying to Ebed-Melech. God is talking to an unbeliever through the spiritual father. Now listen very carefully. Verse 17, chapter 39, verse 17. But I will rescue you. Even though you are an unbeliever, because you honored the spiritual father, I will rescue you. When calamity comes, I will protect you. I will rescue you on that day, declares the Lord. You will not be given into the hands of those who fear. That means Ebed-Melech had some fear. Now what's going to happen? My boss is killed. The sons of my boss is killed. My boss is not killed, but his eyes are plucked. And all the officials are taken, and I am left. And this man's spiritual father, he's also left. Now what's going to happen? God says, what's going to, I will not give you into the hands of those who fear you. Then verse 18 again. Wow. I love this. I'm about to close now. 1 or 2 minutes. I will save you. God is telling to an unbeliever who saved spiritual father. I will save you. You will not fall by the sword, but will escape with your life, because you saved the life of my dying prophet, the spiritual father I sent to the country. I will save you. And then last sentence, beautiful. I love it. Because you trust in me, declares the Lord. What happened? Unbeliever became a believer through the spiritual father. Just because unbeliever tried to help somebody, I don't know, some Jeremiah is screaming and shouting and mourning, is put in the well, and let me save him. And so he helped, and so this fellow who was a transgender, who was a nobody, became a believer. And God took time to speak to him. But God did not speak to others, Zedekiah, other believers. The entire country has been speaking, but they couldn't care less for God's word. They did not honor. But one fellow in the entire country of believers, one unbeliever honored the spiritual father, and God honored him also with his life. That is the story of an unbeliever and the spiritual father, Jeremiah. God bless you. Shalom. என்னம்மா முடியும் போது வந்தீங்க